News locked in, no end in sight. Daniel Andrews extends lockdown 6 after 92 new infections. And the Premier takes a jab at New South Wales over extra vaccine supply as Sydney records more than 1,200 cases. Extra stress for VCE students ordered to get a COVID test before performing arts assessments this week. Fresh hope the Grand Prix will return to Melbourne next year, but vaccines could be the golden ticket. And the Bulldogs bounce back to keep their finals campaign alive.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Alicia Loxley.
Good evening. Victorians will be stuck at home indefinitely after Daniel Andrews confirmed today that lockdown 6 won't be lifted on Thursday. The Premier still insists the Delta outbreak can be driven down to zero despite 92 cases, our highest spike in almost a year, including just 19 in isolation while infectious. Stephanie Anderson begins tonight's coverage.
The skies over Melbourne matched the mood of most as it was confirmed we'll be locked in to lock down for even longer.
We will not be able to open up and take all these rules off in just a few days' time.
There's 92 new cases today, 29 are mysteries, and the early count on how many were isolating while infectious is just 19.
We're still working through a number of the other cases.
There are now 778 active infections in Victoria and close to 500 stem from the city's northern and western suburbs. That's prompted the Premier and community leaders to present a united front from the heart and home of the Bulldogs.
I just really want to say that it is so important that we remain focused at this period of time.
In the West, today's numbers include 12 cases linked to the Newport cluster and another 12 connected to a Broadmeadows childcare centre in the north. There are 9 infections stemming from school transmission at Glenroy West Primary, Altaqua and Elam College, 4 linked to Woolworths at Millers Junction in Altona North, 1 case in a Flinders Street apartment building and 1 connected to the new Port Melbourne cluster. And in the Goulburn Valley, the Shepparton outbreak grew by 9.
In addition, we have 15 cases that are linked to previously identified cases in recent days, so household contacts, primary close contacts to individual cases.
It's been almost a full year since our daily number topped 90, and 3.5 weeks of hard lockdown is yet to stop the rise.
We continue to see people presenting late for testing, sitting on symptoms for 2-3 days, sometimes up to a week or 2 weeks. We really need people to present very early when they have symptoms.
North of the border, the stats are even bleaker, a new record high for New South Wales, but the Premier says he's secured a promise from the PM that Sydney's preferential vaccine supply won't stick.
The notion of giving up vaccine that could have been in Victorians' arms so that people in other states can go and have picnics, no.
35% of our population is fully vaccinated, so we're halfway to that magic 70% number.
In Victoria, 33.9% of people aged over 16 are double-dosed, and more than 55% have had their first, with 85,806 shots delivered across the state yesterday.
Oh, there's a big problem with supply of vaccines. There's not, Premier. You've got truckloads, warehouse loads of AstraZeneca there.
What is on hand was going into arms at mass clinics this afternoon, some perplexed to hear their efforts won't be enough to earn them some freedom from lockdown 6.
It actually sucks because I've been looking forward to it.
I'm not happy about it, but I guess just have to do what's necessary to get on top of it.
Not happy because I've got a couple of kids that do homeschooling, so the burden is real. It's tough.
We will all have to find a way, find it in ourselves to push on and continue to throw everything we've got at trying to drive these numbers down.
It's another day of no hope and no plan.
And Steph, how much longer will this lockdown run?
Well, Alicia, that is the question every Victorian wants answered, but the Premier says he's still waiting for advice from the Chief Health Officer. What he has confirmed is we shouldn't expect an announcement before Tuesday. That's because the next couple of days of case numbers will be key to weighing up the risks. We're told everything is on the table, including rolling back some select restrictions if it's deemed safe to do so, and the possibility of some different rules in regional areas. But today's confirmed cases did include 1 infection in Traralgon, someone who travelled to Melbourne for a few funeral, so I think it's fair to say right across the map tonight it's one of those scenarios again of just having to wait and see what's ahead. Alicia?
Yes, indeed. All right, Steph, thank you. 1,218 new local infections and another 6 deaths in New South Wales. But as it reaches the halfway mark towards reopening, Gladys Berejiklian has warned COVID normal will depend on how the healthcare system copes. More from Dougal Beattie.
At a testing clinic in Sydney, firefighters doused the flames, the work of a suspected arsonist with an anti-COVID agenda.
We do not want a person like this in the community.
It came on another record day for New South Wales, with 1,218 local infections detected.
I don't want people to go through the daily roller coaster of case numbers going up and down.
Another 6 deaths were recorded. 3 were in their 70s, the other 3 in their 80s.
4 of them were unvaccinated and 2 of them had only had 1 dose of the vaccine.
The caseload putting the state's healthcare system under increasing strain. 813 COVID patients are in hospital, 126 in intensive care, 54 are on ventilators. Among those hospitalised with the virus is the wife of Hussein Tahar.
She's struggling to breathe. I have my 3.5-year-old who's in this bed here, spiking up a temperature. I'm by myself. It's very hard. It's not easy.
The father from Sydney's southwest also has COVID, and so does his son. He claims he knows the couple who they contracted the virus from.
They were infectious 4 to 5 days, but they didn't disclose this information because they don't believe in corona.
Michelle Rosentreater has heard it all before. She's a senior ICU nurse on the front line.
The complacency of the community and those that say it's not real is it's just so disrespectful.
She warns some units are at capacity and there's not enough nurses to care for infected patients. Staff are tired, overworked and overwhelmed.
It'll take 6 people to turn somebody from their back to their stomach, and it'll take the same amount of people to turn them back onto their back.
But our system will cope. We've been planning for this. No doubt the health system is stretched.
The silver lining continues to be vaccination rates. 834,000 people got the jab in the past week. New South Wales edging towards restrictions easing, but it won't be open slather.
What we can do at 70% double dose will depend on the case numbers and how many people are in ICU.
Dougal Beattie, 9 News.
An added layer of pressure for some already stressed VCE students tonight. As Maggie Rayworth explains, anyone studying performing arts must pass a COVID test before sitting their SAC exams.
Year 12 student Azriel Halge studies VCE music. She's been cramming hard because she wants to make a career of it.
Breathing in snowflakes.
Azriel is about to sit her SAC exam, but before she's tested, she must get tested.
That time out of your day when you can be sitting at home like relearning everything or going over notes, summarising what you need.
For those performing SACs, we are asking students to take a test beforehand, 48 hours beforehand, through any of our 200 plus testing centres to make sure they clear a negative test.
A SAC exam, or school assessed coursework, contributes greatly to the ATAR, a score which usually determines where and what is studied at a tertiary level. Under the measure, students won't be required to isolate while waiting for their results, and if they fail to be tested, they won't be refused entry to their exam.
Our very strong expectation is that schools will be checking that for those children coming in for their performing arts SACs, that they've cleared a negative test.
These people should be studying and preparing for their SAC to then go and say, sorry, you've now got to go and spend hours in a queue for a test. It makes no sense.
The measure will impact about 5,000 students. There is leeway for VCE students who feel there wasn't enough notice. Those with SACs over the next 3 days can get tested for COVID-19 within 48 hours after their exam. And while it's another chore on a Year 12's busy schedule, Azriel says she's happy to do her bit.
It's probably a little bit frustrating, but I feel like a lot of us will do it.
It's hoped all final year students will be vaccinated before October. Maggie Rayworth, 9 News.
There are hopes major events like the Grand Prix could be back on track by next year. The Premier says discussions are underway about whether we'll need to be vaccinated to get tickets to functions in the future. Elizabeth Moss reports.
The only rubber hitting this road is from those getting a COVID test. For 2 years, the Grand Prix track has laid mostly dormant, but there are reports Formula One could return to Albert Park next April.
We should be able to say now absolutely that that event is going to happen, that we are going to see Grand Prix in 2022.
An absolute the Premier couldn't give.
I have no announcements to make today about any major events.
With the odds of an MCG Grand Final lower by the day, the hope of another school holiday tourism boost disappearing, and safety nets like JobKeeper gone, the entire tourism, hospitality and events industry is on its knees.
The industry now is operating in far more uncertainty and frankly far more chaos than we were operating in last year.
The reality is that if we don't start seeing some events this year, a lot of the businesses involved with these events will not be here in 2022.
Experts believe it can become a reality if planning starts now and travel bubbles, event insurance and rapid testing are considered. Daniel Andrews today confirming there's a chance when major events do return, you'll need to be vaccinated to get a ticket.
So I think the time is coming where your vaccination status will matter.
The state's economy relies on major events like the Grand Prix to bring in much needed money, particularly in the form of tourists. The Victorian Tourism Industry Council wants the government to provide a clearer roadmap for businesses and more financial support to make sure the industry survives.
Everyone right now just needs a little bit of hope to help them hang on to.
Elizabeth Moss, 9 News.
The Federal Treasurer says it will be ridiculous if people in Melbourne can fly to Canada before they are allowed to travel to Cairns. But as the Morrison government presses premiers to open state borders once vaccination targets are hit, the divisions are growing. Here's Chris Ullman.
The federal government's push to reopen Australia is on in earnest.
If we don't open up at 70 to 80% vaccination rates, then when? When do kids go back to school? When do businesses reopen? When can we attend the funerals and the weddings of our loved ones? When can we move more freely in our own country?
And there is significant pushback from COVID-free states.
What I don't want to do is, when we get to 70% 2-dose vaccination, deliberately infect our citizens. It doesn't make any sense, because hundreds of people will then die.
The fragile national agreement on opening up sets no clear vaccination target for reopening state borders.
We need to open up as one country. How ridiculous, Chris, would it be if an Australian can travel to Canada before they can travel to Cairns?
But if anything, the divide between states is widening.
It's going to be very difficult for states that don't currently have COVID suddenly to fling open the borders. And I don't think their people will allow the premiers to do that.
Apart from the social dislocation, the economic costs of lockdown are immense.
With our biggest two states, Chris, in lockdown, New South Wales and Victoria, it's costing around $2 billion a week.
The Treasurer will be sweating this week's national accounts, which may show the country is again dipping into recession. And the only path to recovery is to end the lockdowns and border closures for good.
We need to learn to live with COVID. Other countries are, and with our vaccination rates rising rapidly, Australia will.
But not without a political brawl. Chris Ullman, 9 News.
Well, the second week of the AFL finals is set after the Dogs extended a 17-year September drought for Essendon. Let's go live now to Ayrton Woolley, who is in Perth. Ayrton, how will it look from here?
Well, Alicia, we're certainly starting to get to the business end of the season now. Two teams falling by the wayside this weekend in Sydney and Essendon. Today in Launceston, some really tough conditions. The Bulldogs snapped back into form with a 49-point victory, which moves them into a semi-final next week. And we'll take a look now at what those semi-finals will look like. It starts on Friday night here in Perth. It'll be Geelong up against GWS. Then on Saturday, the Dogs play Brisbane at the Gabba. Time TBC at this stage as the AFL works on those travel arrangements, likely to be perhaps in the afternoon. We also have the preliminary final picture for the following week. It'll be Friday night, Melbourne up against Geelong or GWS. So the Demons, their home prelim here in Perth. Then Port Adelaide up against Brisbane or the Dogs in Adelaide on Saturday night. So two massive games looming there. And the grand final, of course, September 25, the AFL still aiming for. So it's likely that that pre-finals bye will now slot in after the preliminary final. For the moment, the Dogs and Giants will remain in Tasmania, or they too come here to Perth. So plenty happening. All of those teams just about here with the grand final decision likely looming early in the week. Alicia?
It's a big migration. All right, Ayrton, thank you very much for that. And Clint joins me now with a preview of tonight's sport. G'day, Clint.
Hey, Alicia, thanks so much for that. Tonight in sport, we've got breaking news regarding Toby Green. Here's Braden Ingram.
Clint, the Giants superstar, has been sent directly to the tribunal for making contact with umpire Matt Stevic, and it's a former whistleblower who says the AFL needs to send a very harsh message at the tribunal. We'll have that coming up in sport.
Thanks so much, Braden. Also coming up tonight in sport, we'll have more on the finals. You just heard there, Essendon have bombed out in Tassie. They'll have to wait another year to break that long finals drought. But for the Doggies, this could be the win that reignites their spluttering campaign.
Lots of momentum here for the Dogs as they go into next week, and that's gone through. Norton's got 3.
The D's wing it to Perth, a week's rest and a trip to the dentist now on the cards. Bellamy fires up at his embarrassing Storm. Arsenal in the gun after a Premier League hiding, and the horse that had a bit of extra bite. And a heartbreaking finish to the women's triathlon, unfortunately, at the Paralympics. That story and much more coming up soon in sport, Alicia.
All right, look forward to Clint. We'll see you very soon. There are fears another terror attack is imminent in Afghanistan. President Joe Biden's warning next. Plus, communities on America's Gulf Coast warned to brace for the fury of Hurricane Ida and making sure no child feels left out, even in lockdown. Hurricane Ida is hurtling towards America's Gulf Coast, bringing with it catastrophic winds and a potentially life-threatening storm surge. As Amelia Adams reports, it's expected to make landfall in Louisiana tomorrow.
Making landfall in Cuba as a Category 1 storm. Residents there spared the worst, but Ida is far from done, gathering strength as it heads for the Louisiana coast, with winds expected to be more than 200 kilometres an hour.
It'll be one of the very strongest storms to hit Louisiana since the 1850s.
Droves of New Orleans residents heeding warnings to get out of harm's way.
Prepare yourselves. If you're going to leave, you need to do that now.
Those staying behind know all too well what they're up against.
All these people waiting for generators. This is hurricane prep in Louisiana, y'all.
Locked everything down, moved everything that could blow away, filled up all the vehicles.
And I bought a dozen life jackets just in case, you know.
Time is not on our side. It's rapidly, it's growing, it's intensifying.
Ida expected to hit as a Category 4 within hours, 16 years to the day since Hurricane Katrina made landfall as a Category 3 storm in 2005, leaving more than 1,800 dead and over $1 billion in damage.
And it's a stark reminder that we have to do everything we can to prepare the people in the region and make sure we're ready to respond.
The US president now facing a fresh crisis on the home front. He was briefed by his federal emergency team and committed to providing whatever resources and support are needed in the coming days.
As locals prepare for the worst, with the horrors of Katrina never far from their thoughts. In the United States, Amelia Adams, 9 News.
President Joe Biden has warned of an ISIS-K attack within the next 24 hours as desperation grows to evacuate ahead of that August 31 deadline.
The fact that 2 of these individuals are no longer walking on the face of the earth, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the people of Afghanistan.
The first commercial flight has begun taking Australians and visa holders home from Dubai. Making sure no child misses out is the mission of a charity helping bring children together from all walks of life. Friend in Me runs inclusive events for kids, and Darcy Fisher is among those raising a cup to help generate funds. Madeline Slattery explains.
14-year-old Darcy Fisher is pretty content in his minion mansion. With 2 older brothers, Darcy is a social butterfly, but his mum Julie still sees him being excluded because he lives with Down syndrome.
A lady walked past with her son and saw that he had a pull-up on, and he was probably about 10 at the time. And she said, "Oh, look, he's got a nappy on. How disgusting."
Then came along the Friend in Me charity.
See, we've got the same.
The group runs social events with a mission to make sure no child gets left behind.
So a lot of our families are children living with disabilities.
Right now, events have become virtual catch-ups, but Julie and Darcy have great memories of parties from the past.
No judgment. So there were so many kids there and every single one of them was having the best time.
Given fundraising events can't happen in person right now, it's launched a virtual campaign where the idea is to donate what you'd spend on a cup of coffee each week.
Tonight, all we simply ask you to do is to raise a cup and take a photo and tagging us.
Madeline Slattery, 9 News.
What a lovely idea. Well, Maddie is here with us now with all of the weather details for you, and it's been a weekend of contrast, Maddie.
Chocolates and boiled lollies, Alicia, but surprisingly, the city's maximum didn't vary much. Yesterday's sunny skies delivered a maximum of 17.8, and despite today's cloud and showers, it still managed to get to 16.2, although that was only for a very brief moment at 12:40. It hovered around 11 or 12 for most of the afternoon. Showers are clearing out through eastern parts of the state now, and they only delivered modest totals: 9 millimetres at Berwick, 7 at Ferny Creek and 6 at Pakenham, and Kilmore collected 12 in the early hours of the morning. The final 2 days of winter promise some nicer weather, and I'll have all those details for you later in the bulletin, Alicia.
Okay, Maddie, we'll see you very soon. A fake nurse has abducted a newborn baby from her mother's hospital room. The frightening ordeal next. And cabin crew on an Afghan rescue flight make a special delivery 30,000 feet in the air. A woman pretending to be a nurse has stolen a baby from a hospital in Mexico by smuggling it out in a handbag. The child's mother said the fake midwife came into her room just hours after birth, claiming she was taking the infant to the nursery before fleeing. Fortunately, the little girl was found alone but healthy and safe by the side of a road 6 kilometres away. A baby girl became an extra passenger on an Afghan refugee flight when her mother went into labour at 30,000 feet. With no doctors on board the Turkish Airlines flight to Britain, cabin crew helped deliver the child. Her name is Hava, or Eve in English. Well, Eddie Jaku knows a thing or two about survival. After living through the horrors of the Holocaust, the 101-year-old has also beaten a heart attack to become one of the oldest Australians to successfully undergo transplant surgery. Ellie Walsh has the story.
With a spring in his shuffle, Eddie Jaku describes himself as the happiest man on earth.
You look beautiful.
He encapsulated it too during his 2019 TED Talk, which drew a standing ovation.
I do not hate anyone. Hate is a disease which may destroy your enemy, but will also destroy you in the process.
This week it was an audience of 2 as the great-grandfather was given the once-over at St Vincent's.
Yeah, it looks very good. You can see.
At 101, Eddie has become one of the oldest patients to have his aortic valve replaced after suffering a heart attack. A less invasive procedure than open-heart surgery, the muscle is accessed via an artery, and a thin, flexible tube with a new valve is guided into place.
It's highly unusual. We have never treated anyone anywhere near his age, mainly because a lot of people, once they get to that age, are very frail.
But Eddie is a survivor, a Holocaust survivor. In his book, The Happiest Man on Earth, he attributes his strength to family, friends, and gratitude.
When you consider he's 101, still going reasonably strongly and having undergone a hell of a lot right up until this last experience, it's really quite amazing.
I'm doing everything I can to make this world a better place for everyone.
And that is happiness, says Eddie, a choice available to all of us. Ellie Walsh, 9 News.
Well, police have been attacked by border protesters on the New South Wales-Queensland state line. A man is facing charges and others were arrested after demanding an end to the lockout. Adam Hegarty with this report.
Let him go! Let him go! Let him go!
When force meets anger,
Help me!
Both are exacerbated.
You're killing us all!
A small army of police guarding every crevice of the Coolangatta-Tweed border, determined to stop a repeat of last weekend's illegal snap rally.
Move back, guys, move back.
This man recognised and swiftly dragged away.
That I was taking photos of a police officer.
On our side, here in Queensland, we had 3 arrests.
It kept the hordes at bay, but the smaller band of protesters was still heard.
First time in my life I've had to protest to go to work.
The most vocal yelling from the anti-COVID vax script.
It's our body, it's our choice.
Though among them stood the far more measured families and business owners divided or crippled by the border split.
There's people sleeping in their shops because they can't go home.
You can see here right now how much protesters have been outnumbered by police, and that's been the case all afternoon. The show of force clearly working. We understand that many protesters were stopped on the southern side of the New South Wales border.
I'm a bit disappointed more people didn't turn up.
The one true solution, re-merging the twin towns, remains out of reach. Whether dropping the border checkpoints south or reinstating the border bubble, neither have progressed past political talkfest.
Hopefully the Border Commissioner from New South Wales and our State Disaster Coordinator can work together in the best interests of those communities.
Until then, tension at the divided border can be cut with a knife. Adam Hegarty, 9 News.
A new 4-in-1 pill is having amazing results protecting people with high blood pressure from heart attacks and stroke. The details for you next. And Tony Jones visits the Northcote workshop where old tools are becoming new again. Just hours after his homecoming to Melbourne, Olympic boxing bronze medalist Harry Garside has been hit with a fine for attending a party in Mooroolbark last night. Police have confirmed 5 people were at the illegal gathering, photos of which were posted on social media. Each will be fined more than $5,000. Up to a third of Australian adults have high blood pressure, and many prescribed medication are still not properly protected. Researchers have told Gabriella Rogers a poly pill that contains low doses of different drugs can protect more people from cardiovascular disease.
Jen Clark is doing all she can to control her high blood pressure, which is the leading cause of heart attack and stroke.
I just think it's important. It gives you a long and happy life. Like, it's not just heart attacks, it's sort of disability.
She took part in the trial of this quad pill, 4 very low dose medicines in the one capsule to treat her condition.
1 tablet once a day, and it gave me the full effects and was simple.
This clinical trial is the first of its kind to do this.
The aim, to treat patients more quickly and effectively to reduce their risk.
Commonly, when you've got high blood pressure, you come to the doctor, they start you on one medicine. That doesn't achieve blood pressure control. You then start on another medicine. That it doesn't achieve blood pressure control. You start on another medicine.
The quad pill contains 4 commonly prescribed blood pressure lowering drugs, including a diuretic. Each ingredient has only a quarter of the usual dose.
Each of the 4 medicines do act differently to lower blood pressure. Some of them make you wee more, so they're a weak diuretic. Some of them make your blood vessels less stiff.
The quad pill was compared to a medication most commonly prescribed for initial treatment. The trial involved up to 600 Australians. It showed that about 80% of patients on the quad pill achieved blood pressure control at 12 weeks, which researchers say is an amazing result.
Even at 12 months, there was still that difference, 80% with a single pill in the quad pill arm versus 60% in the control arm.
And it was just as safe, but the pill isn't available on the market. The latest evidence, though, could change that.
Some company, though, out there will try to manufacture this now.
Gabriella Rogers, 9 News.
Rusty tools from workshops around the world are being brought back to life thanks to the dedication of one man. From his suburban shop, Mike Sabritsky is not only building a connection with past woodworkers, but inspiring future ones. Tony Jones met him.
In his Northcote workshop, Mike Sabritsky has the capacity to go time travelling, and he's got just the tools to do it.
André Roubaud was a famous French cabinet maker in the 17th century.
And so these planes here with this style, they date from 1600 to 1750.
The shop is a celebration of craftsmanship from bygone eras. Mike runs the tool restoration business with wife Mari.
You don't very often see that many nice planes in one spot.
There's also Rocky, a cross Staffy Great Dane. That's a story in itself. But as for the stories behind these pieces, they can slowly be unearthed.
When you see a tool that's got, you know, multiple dates stamped into it or multiple owners' names, you just feel it's like a tangible connection to the past. It's a bit like a baton relay. We don't ever own these things really, we're just custodians for a little while.
These tools couldn't be more removed from the click and collect culture of today. Tools that have been rescued from rusty old sheds and garages that might have once been a refuge for grandfathers.
Definitely people are more aware of it, and I think the internet and probably social media has sort of driven that to some extent, so that people are a little bit more educated that there is a good tool underneath sometimes that rusty thing that's in the shed. It just needs a bit of love, a bit of a clean, and it will come up like new, and better than new in some cases.
With Melbourne again in the grip of lockdown, woodworking is enjoying a whole new wave of interest. Tinkering is again a pastime, and not just for those grandfathers.
We have a lot of parents come in here looking for tools that they can use with their children and show them how to do stuff.
To walk around this shop, it's hard to get a handle on just what it is. Part shrine, part school. But there's nothing part-time about the passion of the man who runs it. This is one you're restoring at the moment, is it?
That's correct. That one's unrestored. And underneath all that grime and rust is a lovely, lovely handsaw.
Old-time chippies love to impart their wisdom. Measure twice, cut once has long held many a novice in good stead. In fact, there's plenty of these gems that can be drilled into the memory bank.
Don't be afraid to have a go at it. Like, don't be afraid, and don't be afraid, learn from your mistakes. If you make a mistake once, that's learning. If you make it twice, you've got to think about what you're doing.
There's also that old saying, a man is only as good as his tools. And thanks to the restoration work of Mike, there's now plenty of good man and woman working wonders. Tony Jones, 9 News.
Lovely story, isn't it? All right, Clint is back at this now with all of your Sunday sport for you.
Thank you so much, Alicia. After the break, then there were 6 as the Bombers are sent packing. And just maybe this is the moment the doggies got their bite back. Also, the former ump who wants Toby banned, and the racehorse that was chomping at the bit. The Western Bulldogs have kept their flag hopes alive, bouncing back from a 3-game losing streak to end Essendon's season with a 49-point drubbing in Launceston. In wet and trying conditions, the Bombers went goalless in the second half as those dogs split the contest apart. Corey Norris has the highlights.
Silencing their critics.
Handball over the top, game over.
And restoring premiership credentials.
And they march into the second week of the finals.
It was great to get back to some of the best footy that we know we're capable of. We haven't won a final in 5 years now, so it was a bit of a monkey off the back for a lot of the boys.
Early on, it was an old dog unleashing some pretty familiar tricks.
Stringer, can he kick the first? He can! Bombers away!
The Bulldogs' big guns took a while to get going, although they had some pretty handy backup.
Got the handball back to Hannon. 2 in a row, Dogs.
Luke Beveridge left his box to get a message to ground level. It might have had something to do with stopping Jake Stringer.
Stringer kicks, he's got a couple.
Wakeman's fourth gave the Dogs a 2-goal buffer midway through the third.
In a really tight game, that's enormous.
The Bombers needed to show some fight.
A bit going on. And Jake Stringer's right in the middle of it.
Tempers flaring too at the final change.
As they continue to push and shove in Launceston.
But it didn't give the Bombers the spark they'd hoped for. Their finals losing streak will now head into an 18th season. Corey Norris, 9 News.
Toby Green is set to dominate the headlines ahead of the semi-finals, referred directly to the tribunal for making contact with an umpire. Braden Ingram is following the story for us. Braden, let's face it, it's not unexpected.
No, certainly not, Clint, particularly after the emergence of some new vision which shows the incident from a side-on angle and may make life more difficult for Toby at the tribunal, which is that hearing likely to be held on Tuesday night. Evidence from the umpire involved certainly to play a pivotal role as to whether Toby Green has any shot of facing the Cats on Friday night.
Does this action warrant Toby Green missing a semi-final? It's the question only the tribunal can answer.
The fact that Toby walks straight at Matt and makes contact with him
is pretty damning.
Green's contact with umpire Matt Stevic has ignited fierce debate in footy circles.
The only one that can tell us how forceful and how demonstrative that contact was are not the people on Twitter who are saying let's rub out Toby Green for 3 weeks. It's an umpire who's done it for 423 games. He's the only witness we should be listening to right now.
Matthew James officiated in 3 AFL Grand Finals. Now retired, he's calling on the league to come down hard.
In my view, it's something that needs to be around the minimum of a 2-week suspension, anywhere up to 4, 5 or 6. And, you know, I think they need to make a stand, and that's got to happen sooner or later because umpiring's struggling at local level, and this is part of the reason.
Unsurprisingly, the Giants are putting their own spin on the matter.
For hours, I don't think there's anything on Snicko, and they just mirrored each other as they pivoted around each other.
Cat Tom Hawkins was the most recent player to be suspended for umpire contact, while Greg Williams will forever be associated with this 9-match ban. Indeed, Green is no stranger to the tribunal.
Take away Toby. It's not even about the player, it's about the action. I'd hate to see a young boy or girl, you know, get bumped into by a player because they've seen it, that it's happened at AFL level and it's an acceptable thing.
Braden Ingram, 9 News.
Still on the finals, and Melbourne coach Simon Goodwin believes his team is primed to go one better than their prelim final exit 3 years ago. The D's were today on the move after securing the week off with a gritty win over Brisbane. Ayrton Woolley reports from Perth.
Touching down in Perth, a team full of confidence. The Demons settling into Joondalup Resort with a drive born in pre-season.
Everyone was saying, you know, we're ready to go. We're ready to win finals, which was pretty exciting that we brought that mentality.
It comes after a special performance. Challenged by Brisbane, Melbourne rose to the occasion.
Oh, what a mark that was!
Bailey Fritsch booting 4 goals. The big guns also firing.
He's their present, he's their future, and this might deliver him into a prelim final. Petrarca!
The Demons will now return to the scene of their last preliminary final, a 66-point mauling at the hands of West Coast, this time ready to take the next step.
We're a completely different side than what we were at 2018. You know, we've really established ourselves in the way we defend.
Goodwin's men literally fought tooth and nail for the week off. Rising star winner Luke Jackson in dire need of more dental work after losing a fake tooth that had been somewhat of a party trick leading into the game.
What? Oh my gosh!
So it's pretty much just a plate and, yeah, got knocked out in year 5, I think.
And in a spicy postscript, Ed Langdon, in praising Simon Goodwin, delivered this apparent drive-by to former coach Ross Lyon.
It is absolutely a nice change to have someone as cool, calm and collected as Goody coming over from Freo when, you know, you don't look Ross in the eye in a meeting and he starts yelling at you. That's been a nice change.
It's understood Langdon has since reached out to Lyon to clarify those comments. In Perth, Ayrton Woolley, 9 News.
OK, so it all sets up 2 exciting semi-finals next week. On Friday night, Geelong and GWS fight it out at Optus Stadium. Then on Saturday, Brisbane to host the Doggies at the Gabba. But at this stage, we don't know if it'll be a day or a night match. Storm coach Craig Bellamy, he has slammed his side after the club's 19-game win record came to an end in a 12-point loss to Parramatta. That starts Sunday's scoreboard. With history on the line, Storm started well enough.
This will be a try. Loomy Loomy!
Only to be out-hunted by the Electric Eels. The rare defeat further soured by a hamstring injury to Josh Adokar.
With all due respect, I'm a bit embarrassed that we come up with that performance.
Shocking conditions greeted the F1s at Spa.
Did the McLaren go round?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. That's Lando Norris.
That hair-raising smash landing Norris in hospital. Daniel Ricciardo lapped up the wet, qualifying 4th behind pole sitter Max Verstappen. At Anfield, Liverpool and Chelsea played out an entertaining yet spiteful draw. The Blues reduced to 10 men after a deliberate handball.
Mo Salah smashes it in. The Premier League at its boiling best, and it's boiling over.
Arsenal hit rock bottom, trounced 5-0 by Man City.
He's taking a touch all the way through for Ferran Torres.
It's the first time in the club's 120 chair triathlon for Aussie Lauren Park. Finally in sport this Sunday night to a horse that bit off a little more than he could chew during a race in the US. It happened in the final sprint to the line with Firenze Fire on the outside sinking his chompers into his rival.
Firenze Fire seemed to savage Yopan there in the stretch, and it's going to be Yopan who gets to the wire first.
Needless to say, as you can see right there, the thrilling contest left punters hungry for more. Big set of teeth on him.
Very nicely done, Clint. Thank you very much for that. All right, Maddie returns now, and the countdown to spring is nearing liftoff, Maddie.
It sure is. Just 2 days to go, Alicia, and winter has kept a couple of warmer than average days up its sleeve, giving spring a head start. The Bureau is already predicting a few early season heat records, and I'll have all the details next.
Ruined Ronnie's life.
Your identity has been stolen.
Held hostage on the line for 5 hours.
You can't speak to anybody.
Robbed of her life savings. The cruel and sophisticated scam fleecing millions from ordinary Australians.
You'll be arrested straight away.
9 News, Monday.
Hello again, and well, today was a very different weather day to yesterday. It had its own ups and downs. These photos from Hastings show we had a mixture of sunshine and cloud today, and in the city the temperature had its share of highs and lows, although it did hit a peak of 16.2. For the most of the afternoon it was 11 or 12. Most suburbs managed to reach 15 or 16, albeit briefly, but it was a rather dark and gloomy end to the weekend after yesterday's sunshine. Showers have been on and off and haven't delivered much, especially through western suburbs. Generally just 1 or 2 millimetres, but a little heavier through the east. Widespread falls of 4 millimetres, 7 at Ferny Creek, 6 at Epping, and to our north, Kilmore recorded 12. The cold front and bulk of the showers are clearing out through eastern parts of the state. Most spots recorded less than 10 millimetres, but there's been some heavier falls of 10 to 15 through the northeast this afternoon. Daytime temperatures took a hit after yesterday's warmth. Wodonga and Ballarat only got to 13, and Sale and Kilmore failed to reach the teens, peaking at 11. But it will be a return to warmer and drier conditions tomorrow as a high sits above us and northerly breezes push down across the state. An approaching front is expected to deliver a few showers on Tuesday, but mostly through the southwest of the state, and they should weaken by the end of the day. Leaving us with a dry and warm start to spring on Wednesday, the Bureau has told us that western and central districts are on track for record temperatures for the start of September. And the penultimate day of winter will also be dry and quite warm in some parts. It should reach the low 20s through the Mallee, 19 at Horsham, 17 and 18 through the southwest, and also through Gippsland, 16 in the northeast. The northwesterly breezes will be moderate to fresh, then becoming strong in the southwest in the evening as a band of showers approaches. Tonight it'll get quite chilly across northern suburbs with minimums of 5 degrees, western suburbs 6 and mostly 7 or 8 through the east. Then we can expect a partly cloudy day with maximums of 17 or 18, and Geelong should reach 19. After an overnight low of 7, the city's heading for 18. Winter will sign off on Tuesday with a partly cloudy top of 21, with a chance of a shower or 2 across the Mornington and Bellarine peninsulas later in the day. And then hello spring, mostly sunny and 23 on Wednesday. It will get windy after that though, so a couple of mild nights, a low of 15 on Thursday, then warming up to 26. That'll be our highest maximum since the 2nd of May. Then it's only expected to drop to 18 overnight into Friday, but staying warm, 24, but very windy before showers arrive, as much as 25 millimetres, up to 20 millimetres on Saturday. Much cooler, 15 degrees, 15 again on Sunday with light showers, so we will come back to earth with a thud next weekend. But tomorrow should put a spring in our step. After a low of 7, the city will warm up to 18 with plenty of late winter sunshine. And Alicia, I can't wait for that 26 on Thursday.
We are going to hold you to that figure, Maddie. All right, thank you very much for that. Now, before we go, here's Tara Brown with a preview of tonight's 60 Minutes.
Thanks, Alicia. Tonight...
Never hated my children.
My friend's not a serial killer. The law says Kathleen Folbig killed her 4 babies.
She has been incarcerated for 18 years.
But 90 of the world's smartest scientists...
To find that is like a smoking gun.
...now say there's proof she's not a murderer.
Very reasonable doubt about that conviction.
And must be freed.
It is time for the legal system to accept they made a mistake.
That's tonight, after the block. Back to you, Alicia.
And that is 9 News this Sunday. I hope you have a great evening. For now, good night.